Welcome to part 16 of Modeling Fundamentals. In this session we're going to have a look at the handrail functions within ProStructures. There's two different types of handrail functions that we can use. The first type that we're going to have a look at inserts along a Smartline or a polyline that we put along the edges of our support members. The other type, we select the support members directly. I'd just like to take the opportunity to point out too that we have a lot of information to get through here, so please feel free that if you want to have a look at what I'm doing, pause the video and go and have a play with it yourself and check my settings against your settings and so forth, but I'm going to have to belt through this stuff pretty quickly. So I'm just going to kick off by drawing a smart line to give us something to put our first handrail on. Normally I would draw this along my structure, but just for ease so you can see what's going on, I'll draw it out here in space. So come to Pro Steel, Tasks E3, and the flyout here we've got two different types. We're going to select the first one. This one here goes on our Smartline or polyline, depending on whether you're using the Power one or the AutoCAD layered product. Okay, so this is what we're going to get by default using the Australian localization. Alright, and let's just start at the top of the tree here, and you can see that we've got a couple of different types here in the layout. We have Parametric, which creates on the fly, and using blocks, which we're going to have a look at shortly. So the best way to put it is Parametric create the handrail component on the fly as it goes. So moving down to the first thing, which is dimensions. Number one is the connection height offset. So that would be a negative value if I had a side offset type connection. Talking about these corners here, number 6 and number 7, the reason I set those to 300 is so that this top pipe ends up in the post, and then I replace those corners later with a proper web forge pre-drawn thing that I've got. The sphere value here, if I want spheres like ball stanchions, number 9 sets that value for me. Moving on, after I set the dimensions up, then I would move to shapes. In the shape type here, you've got your handrail, posts, etc., etc. I can nominate my object type, its location, and whether I actually want it inserted or not. Also the angle is worthy of note too. I always try and push my blue ECS axes up, so just be mindful of that. So we've got all sorts of things in here that we can choose to insert depending on the type of handrail we want, filler rods and so forth if you're doing proper balustrading. Okay, and you know whether we want to insert it. So once we've got our shapes sorted out, I will come to posts. Normally you can see that we can define how we want our posts to work, if they're tapered or the bottom is chopped off on them. There's a little bit of latitude here for you to do some modifications to the posts themselves. Once my post is sorted out, I would look at how I'm going to connect it up with the connection of the post. So by the side we can have side plates, T-plates and all sorts of bits and pieces. You can have your side offsets, which work pretty good, and these ones can have plates as well. So, okay, now those are my settings for pretty much the standard flat web forge handrail, and don't forget you can use polyplate if you sort of get some obscure size. This is worthy of note. You can notice I don't modify, I just keep these as is. I don't try and drill the balls, because that would be a Boolean operation, and the metadata makes your model really big, so please just let that interfere like it does now. Your kick plate, the kick plate, you can set your kick plate values here. Notice it doesn't have a bracket. I can't do anything about that. None of the handrail stuff has kick plate bracket, but that stuff can be added later manually if you'd like to. The filler rods here allow you to add the verticals in normal balustrading, and we can also break the handrail up into segments as well, or in particular balustrading into segments as well. If you're doing that sort of stuff. The end form allows us to come straight to the ground if you want to, or you can do a proper closure. So you can see the settings here that I've got are for web forge, so the inserts are bent to the mid rail, and I've told it to close it completely with a radius of 140. So that's standard web forge closure stuff. The offsets are the start and finish of your rails and your kick plates and so forth. So you can see here I've come 300 in to the first post from the end, which is your standard for your web forge stuff. Also pretty handy if you want to push it back from off steel work and so forth. Your distribution is the final thing that I normally muck around with. We can adjust how we start it, we can adjust the spacings and so forth. I've just got mine set at a maximum of 2 meters to make sure that I meet the code. So what I might do is we'll just minimize all this back up again. So we'll start back at the top of the tree, and let's move to our blocks and have a look at our blocks. Okay, you can see as soon as I select blocks, we get our working or our object line that come out. That's because there's no blocks assigned to this yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to move straight to the block function or block section within here, and it'll ask us for a block path. Now that may or may not be right depending on the build, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go expand this out and go localized Australia, user blocks and handrail. I'm going to tell it to go into my standard localization, user blocks, handrail. Okay, and now it will have the right search path in it, and we'll be able to pull those blocks out of the path. Alright, so you can see the distribution is set up the same. Segments is in here as well. We have posts and fillings. We're going to kick off with a post, and here's where we define what handrail posts we're going to want to use. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to set number 6 and number 7 back to 0. The reason I'm going to do that is because in the corners here, my blocks dictate what the corner is going to be like, not these settings here. So I reset those to 0. So I'm going to kick off by starting with a start post, and now these are the standard Bentley blocks. Now they're not really a block as such, all they are is a drawing with a couple of objects in that are set up to work with this function. So I'm going to go and find the start post, and you can see it drops it straight in, and you can see here that it's just a series of ProSteel objects that have been saved off as a drawing and called in here. Now as we insert additional objects, what's going to happen is it's going to try and continually connect things up for us. So next I'll put an end in, and you watch what happens here. See, it connects them up, but if I put an inner post in, it will tell it to connect each one of those as well. And next we have the ability to add our corners in. You can see here 4 and 5, so we've got a plus and a minus for internal and external corners that we can add in here. So we've dropped those little guys in too. There we go. So you can see very quickly we can create these really cool objects. They just start with a block. There is a couple of prerequisites. There's a tech note for it which I can help you with. Okay, but as you put these in, it will just add them in. If I remove one, it will just go to the next one and try and connect it in. So it works pretty cool. Now in addition to this, we can also add these fillings in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell it that I want to connect and insert fillings as well in between the posts. Come to our fillings, and just like our blocks, we've just got to tell it which block we want to use to fill in the holes with. So Bentley, like I said, have supplied some stuff for us to muck around with. Just quite hasn't put the bolts in there in those, but it has put holes in. You can just make out the shadow of the hole there, so you can run around and put the bolts in if you wanted to put the bolts in. One additional neat function of this is if I grab this original Smartline and drag it, it is parametric. It will update and put new posts in to suit as required, which is really cool. I can actually manipulate it on the fly. Okay, So let's move on and have a look at our second type of handrail. It's number 2 in our handrail set and called Standard Handrail. You simply select the object that you want to associate the handrail to, and in it goes. It creates a logical link to the beam that you pick. And you can pick more than one beam. In this instance I've just picked one. But if I update this beam, because there's a logical link, it updates the bolts, etc. It will lengthen the handrail and so forth. So it's really pretty cool. This is a brand new function. They're still improving it all the time, and it works pretty good now. So let's run through this. Now before I kick off, let me just describe how this whole function works. We have a series of tabs across the top, and then underneath each one of those tabs is a series of sub-tabs that control the elements within that. Okay, you can see at the moment that I've got a -300 offset each side, and I want to pull that in a little bit. So let's move that to 360, and I'm going to apply the changes, and you can see it moves straight in. So like I said, this is parametric. You think of it like an automatic connection. It updates as you tell it to update. Just like the other handrail type, we've got all of our components and so forth that we assign, tell it whether we want to insert it and so forth. Heights are set within here. It's all fairly straightforward once you sort of don't get too daunted with this. The nice thing about here is this is the offsets, so you can see that I've got a bottom rail offset of 100 there, and you can actually break it into the different types of handrails so you can adjust it on the fly. So let's adjust this kick plate out. So I'm going to extend that, say 360 millimeters each side, left and right, update or apply, and in it goes. Every component within this handrail can be individually isolated and adjusted and moved as required. So the posts here, if I put a post over the top of a stiffener or something like that and I needed to move it sideways, one individual post, I come to the post tab, dimension setting, select the current handrail panel that I'm working on, and then the current post that I actually want to work on. And you can see here that as I pick them, they actually highlight for me and they tell me what post it is that I'm working on. So let's say post number 2, I need to shimmy that sideways because it was over the top of something. I can put in a value, positive or negative, depending on which way I want it to go, update, and over it moves. And it will remember these settings no matter what happens to that beam. And the nice thing is that it doesn't update until you tell it or you're ready to update it. So you can make multiple adjustments in one hit if you want to. Alright, let's have a look at some of these end conditions. Like I recommended with the last type of handrail, don't drill the balls of the spheres, please. It'll make the metadata lighter. Moving on to the connections, I just want to update something here that they're going to be adding in the very short future. At the moment here, with these base plates for the top mount, the side offset globally is governed here on the general tab, but really if I've got multiple types of handrail that switch around, the offset needs to be set to 0. And what's going to happen, this top mount is going to get a new offset section put in here, and that'll allow the user to control it more panel by panel like we do everything else. Filler rods, just like the old style handrail, we've got that available for us. Grab bars, it's the rail that runs down the outside. To be honest with you, I haven't even tried playing with any of this, but if it's something that you're that you need, it's very easy to see what it's doing as it's doing it. So please come in here and have a play. Alright, so let's make our way back to some of the sections we haven't spoken about yet. We have got our rail sections here, the end form here. The end form we can align as is. The one I like to use is the curved joint. okay, allowing me to, what it'll do is it will create a complete end panel like that, or an end section, an end bend like that. You can see it actually slips over the top of the other handrail, which is actually how they do it. Once you've got out of the command and I want to come back in and I want to edit this for whatever reason, it's very simple. You just select the beam that the handrail is part of, right click and go to ProStructures properties, navigate your way to the modifications, logical links, and if you scroll through the left and right sort of arrows here, you can see that the link type is the handrail goes black, and then edit it, right? Or I could delete it, right? And we'll delete the whole handrail in its entirety. Alright, if I edit it, it brings me back to the handrail dialog for this actual handrail panel. So let's get into something a little bit trickier. So we'll come back to our standard handrail, and this time I'm going to use multiple objects. So I'm going to pick the start of my first object and navigate to the end of my second object, telling it, so I want you to start up here and head down to the end of this. Now it's going to place in the handrail based on the settings that I used last. So you can see it's put kick plate and bits and pieces in based on that first handrail that I just did. And if we come to the general tab here, you can see that I've actually got a stair setting as well that allows me to go along a horizontal, different settings for the stair, and then back to a horizontal. Now I've actually got a template here set up for this. It's in the Australian templates for this Australian localization, and you can see that we start at 300 and we head up to the end. Now I haven't quite got the end there worked out because I could have gone around the corner or something. I can actually copy bits and pieces in there if I wanted to put the end form in. So what happens if we've got big long stretches to do? Well, the key thing to remember here is the selection method. So we're going to kick off by grabbing the start of the stair up to the end of the horizontal, up to the next end of the next horizontal, and so forth. So you see where I'm going here? And what this does is it indicates to ProStructures what direction you want the handrail to run in. Now what we're going to do, this is fine, this is again based on the last settings that we used. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust all this stuff up. Now you can see my start offset is -300, but the end offset needs to be set as well. So I'm going to make that -360 at the moment, and I'm going to pull that other end back. The global side offset will remain at 0, and I can see that the kick plates there are on the outside rather than the inside. So if I go to rail, general settings, you can see -43 for the kick plate. If I just make that +43, that will push it on the inside rather than the outside. So update that, and the kick plate should all go on the inside. Now for specific modifications, we go to settings per run. If you recall me saying, this is broken up into panels now, so panel 5, panel 4, panel 3, etc. So if you can see here, so panel 5 will light up what I'm working on, and if I want to adjust this end of this kick plate here, I can go to panel 5, the end offset, because it's the end of it, and if I wanted to extend that kick plate 360 mil and update, it will push the end of that kick plate out. Now you can see that I've also got some connections here. That's because my global connection was based on center. So I'm going to want to fix that per run as well. So to do that, we're going to go to post, and we're going to go to connections, and instead of being top mount globally, this particular panel, number 5, I want a side mount plate. Alright, now I'm going to have to change some settings in here, and I'll do this very quickly based on the WebForge standards, so a 130 side offset, the radius settings and so forth. I'll fix the bolt types up here. I want to put an 8.8S in, M16 with 2mm work loose. So all of these settings are just your standard WebForge connection, and it's going to remember what I do with all of these. so I can actually just bring them in on the very next panel. Okay, so I'm just going to run through and just make a couple of these settings. This transverse, I want that 70 mil, so 37.5 each way. I'm going to make that 50 mil centers, but only one bolt, so it's ignored. 102 centers the other way, giving me 146. Okay, so update that, and that should give us our side offsets. Just set in a negative value there. All of this is just trial and error too. Just pull up, go have a look, make sure you're happy with it. Now I'm just going to apply that to all, and what that will do is it will push it around all of the connections. Okay, unfortunately it's probably going to ruin my stair stringer, but for the stair stringer I'll just tell the stair stringer you are top mount instead of side mount plate. So you have a couple of ways we can attack this. Now I can see here I've got to move this post here a little bit sideways. And that guy there is wrong as well. So what we can do is individually go around and we can adjust each one up as is required. So this will be the mount for the post connection, panel number 4, and it's the last post on panel number 4. Which makes it post 4, and I can set that a negative value to pull it back towards my right. Right, this is really cool how you can manipulate and change this, and you can get big structures of handrails with many panels involved, and you can just tweak it and adjust it as you go. So the kick plate's just kicked out there, and I'm just going to be able to jump in and tweak that up as well. Now at this point I just want to jump across to the stairs, well the PFCs, where I want to change them from a side offset through to a top mount. So current handrail panel number 1 and number 2, I want to make those top mount rather than side offset. So I'm just going to apply that and make it happen. And we'll tweak up that top post to the top of the stair stringer. So that's current handrail panel 1, and that will be the last post on number 1. Let's pull that back away from that corner a little bit, so we'll pull it back 300 millimeters, update that, and on panel number 2 I want to move that first post, I want to move that 300 millimeters away from the intersection, and what we're going to do is we're going to hide the second post. We're going to get rid of the second post. We can do that by unticking visible and with connection, and that'll make everything disappear. So after you get the hang of this a little bit, you can start creating your own templates with your own settings, and from then on it's a simple case of select a beam, particularly easy if there's these single ones, come down to your templates. I've got some horizontal runs here with a side offset 130, drops them in with my preset settings, and you just run around and pick the beams that you want to put the connections on. Final thing is, don't forget to edit these. Just select the beam, go to the logical link and edit the connection through the logical link.